coffee experiences. We were lucky enough to have Rico come up and do a bit of an expose on the symposium. So now we're going to move into the realm of roasting, and we're going to be looking at different aspects within that as well, from sourcing through to tech. So I'd like to introduce our four panelists, but I won't go on too long, and I'll let them just introduce themselves a little bit. It would be really good if you could just say to the crowd who you are, where you come from, and maybe just a bit of a background as to how you got into it, and we'll build upon that as we go through. Maxwell?
Hello. My name's Maxwell. I'm based in the southwest of the UK in Bath. I got into coffee about 10 years ago. We started doing festivals and events, became, like a lot of people in this room, obsessed with the potential of coffee. We started a shop in Bath about 7 years ago, and then I started taking part in barista competitions, and I won the UK Championship 3 times, and then that opens up all sorts of potential collaborations and possibilities. I guess one of the biggest collaborations we did was with the chemistry department at the university in Bath, and that ended up in a book about water and coffee and how they affect each other. We started a roastery just over a year ago, and about 2 months ago we launched specialty coffee capsules, so some of the world's best coffee in Nespresso compatible capsules. That's my story.
Thanks, Maxwell. Should we go down the line?
Hello, my name's Bradley. I'm from IKAWA. We're based in London. My background's in coffee equipment for a long time. I joined IKAWA about 18 months ago, and since then we've grown a lot, and I've had the opportunity to speak to hundreds of thousands of roasteries around the world, so I've got hopefully some insights from them, and yeah, really pleased to be here.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Anne Luna from Koppi, coffee roasters in Sweden. Yeah. Well, I've been in the industry maybe 12 years now. Won the Swedish Barista Championship 10 years ago. Won the Swedish Brewers Cup this year. Yeah, we started our roastery just over 9 years ago. So that's what I've been up to the last decade.
Thanks, Sam.
Hello, my name is Andy. I work with Cropster. We're a software technology company based out of Innsbruck, Austria. The company's been in business for 10 years in May, which is great. I've been with Cropster for almost 5 years now, and we provide different solutions, technology solutions for coffee businesses, mainly for roasteries, also for quality labs and traders, green coffee platforms, and also producers. So we touch quite a few different spots of the coffee chain. And I've worked my way into coffee 5 years ago, and I'm learning every day.
What were you in before coffee?
I used to work for a agricultural center in Colombia, basically where Cropster emerged from. That's a weird coincidence. And I worked on how the entire food supply chain can adapt to climate change. There was one project with coffee, but also, different crops involved. And I'm a foodie myself. I'm a fan of high quality foods. And so gradually the links to Cropster started emerging, and that's how I ended up with Cropster.
So if you 5 years in the industry and maybe just a little bit longer experience, do you see yourself continuing with coffee as you go on, working in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think coffee from a nerdy perspective, coffee has so many variables to cover and so many different aspects to understand. It's such a mystery, even though it's, I guess, probably the most investigated crop there is. But there are still so many different variables to understand and so many different aspects on how to improve quality, both of the product but also of the supply chain. So this is what it makes really, really interesting for myself.
On the other hand, Cropster as a company is open for any crop, so we also work with cocoa and chocolate businesses, tea businesses, olive oil businesses. So anything up there in the high quality crop and food business is very interesting, but I guess I will definitely stick with coffee.
Would you like to explain to people exactly what Cropster does with regards to coffee then, for people who may not be familiar with this software?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the core of Cropster is a web-based platform to manage different quality and traceability aspects of coffee. We are most known for our solution for roasteries. So it includes also a roast tracking software, and then this all syncs to a business management, roastery management platform, integrates with green coffee, has integrated cupping apps, gives the roaster a both high level and detailed perspective on the roasting, helps them understand the roasting process in combination with the quality of the final product. Trace the quality of the product over time, understand the green coffee components that is linked to it. So as far as roasting goes, this is our solution, but we have similar solutions also for green coffee traders, cooperatives, and so forth. In a few words wrapped up, that's what we do.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So, Anne, if you've been in coffee 12 years, when did you first start roasting? Because I'm curious to know, did you begin without using the software or any help with tech? Was it all on an instinct? Taste, of course, is pretty fundamental.
No, well, we started roasting when we founded our company in 2007. It was very manual back then, for sure. Then we used some kind of software that we got from Tim Wenderville for a few years before Cropster was introduced, and then we switched over.
And it's a really integral part of the whole roasting process, yeah?
I think it's extremely helpful in many ways, but we always try to follow up with every batch we roast, and I try to do a correlation between the results you get in the cup and the profile.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Maxwell, now that you've been doing it a year, roasting a year, yeah?
Yeah.
Then what, are you using the software as well to track your profiles and the quality?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, isn't it? Based on your starting point during the past 10 years, you come into it at a very different point. I think we've had it a lot easier than maybe people would have had it back in the day. So we make the most of what everybody else is doing, all of their findings, all of the technology and all of the equipment. Yeah.
Okay, cool. You've done the groundwork with the water though, so well, yeah.
Thanks, mate.
And Bradley, I'd like you to just explain to people who aren't familiar with IKAWA exactly what IKAWA do as a company. Also, IKAWA are one of the sponsors, and you can find them upstairs on the second floor doing some cool demonstrations of.
So IKAWA was formed in 2012. Since then, we've done a lot of research and development to build essentially a better sample roaster. It's according to our users, more controllable, more consistent, more efficient, and quite frankly, more fun to use. So we built them in our London workshop, and it's a mix between hardware and software. Essentially what we've done is we've taken the roast profile process and made it digital, and therefore proactive, instead of reactive and manual. So there's lots of different benefits to that. And it's kind of the reason we've been adopted widely over the last year or two. And yeah, our thing is making sample roasting more accessible, trying to work with Origin as much as possible to support smallholder farmers, and so they know more about their quality, and yeah, that's kind of what we do and what we've been doing.
So it's making, if we're saying before technology, a lot of people went on instinct with coffee and obviously the taste. But this is making it more collaborative on a global scale, yes? That people can try a certain kind of coffee to a certain profile. And and feed that back and forth with each other from the farm through to, well, I know you're releasing the home roaster later on in the year as well, so it really is from origin all the way through to someone's kitchen, which is awesome.
Yeah, there's a big element of that. For sure, my thought is no matter what roasting equipment you're using, the roast itself depends on the roaster and the expert behind the roasting. So on the IKAWA, it just so happens to be you capture that on the app. But you know, it's for the professional sample roasting, it really depends on the expert still of the roaster. But, you know, sort of similar sort of understanding of like bean to cup machines they're not going to remove the barista anytime soon. And then the idea with the home roaster is very much to leverage the knowledge of a roaster and make home roasting super accessible for consumers. Because at the moment, as Caffeine has said in the past, like it's a dark art. And so we're trying to push that and make it more accessible. And we feel that's just going to help support growing specialty coffee for the middle of the market.
Because it's being released later on, but you've already had a lot of pre-orders for the home roasters, yeah? So are most people just home enthusiasts? That's the majority of people who place those orders?
Yeah, it's a mix really. For sure, like a lot of the pre-orders have come from what I call the early adopters, the people who are really into coffee, want to take it to the next level of connoisseurship. And then the other side of it is it's more of a lifestyle product, being able to say that you roast your own coffee. And with that, you know, it's super important to make it accessible and simple. So it's a mix, but for sure, they have a lot of enthusiasts that pre-order.
You guys want to add anything to what Bradley's just said? Did you want to add anything to what Bradley was saying? You looked like you wanted to say something.
No, I was just, you know, new technology comes out quite a lot, and a lot of people in coffee get attached to the romanticism of something that's very sort of handmade or basic, and then new technology comes along and then everyone goes, oh no, coffee's becoming automated. And I just think Bradley was pointing out that the idea of the equipment isn't to automate things for people, it's allowing each person to craft the coffee in the way they wish, but giving them more control to have their own expression.
So it's not that you get lazy and automated, it's the fact that you can be a better roaster yourself.
Exactly. A lot of the time, new technology that makes something easier gets put forward as it's sort of taking the art and the mystery out of coffee, but it's actually helping us do more complex things. Yes.
So that's the big legacy then from both Cropster and IKAWA, is just making people better and making sure that they're getting the most out of that coffee that has taken so long to grow. Yeah, that's the lasting legacy. It's cool. And why do roasters sample roast, if we're talking about IKAWA? What is the point in doing that for people who may not know? That's open to the floor.
I'll kick it off. So, I guess before sample roasting, the like simplest analogy I have is before the radio. A friend of yours says, I've heard this song or this artist and you should really buy their album. And so you've got the recommendation from your friend, you buy the album, and you might really like it and you might not really like it. So I see that as the analogy, like your importer says, I've got this really great coffee, you should buy 10 bags of it. And it could be really great, but you're not sure. So for me, the radio is a sample. You know, that was the point of the radio, that's why it was so popular, sample music. And so sample roasting allows a roaster to be more confident about their selection and what they're bringing forward to their consumers, and hopefully push quality and uniqueness as well, because it's a competitive market, and we want to be roasting different coffee, but good quality coffee. Yeah. That's the simplest way to...
That's a nice analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what work goes on behind the scenes to do a really great production roast? How much groundwork do you have to lay until you can get past the sample and just go straight for the bigger scale?
Well, again, I'll frame it, but I think obviously I've got two people either side of me that have a better insight. But what we find from our users is, yes, going behind the scenes is sample roasting is a process that used to be done really well. And then from there, the way you bring that forward to production roasting is through profile roasting. And our roaster is quite handy in terms of letting you do that by changing small variables. But for sure, the best roasteries I've seen yes, they take the sampling very seriously, but there's also a stage of profiling which helps them to decide how to roast the coffee and just be a bit more efficient about the quality of coffee on offer. But for sure, there's two people outside of me who probably have more insight.
Well, I think sample roasting's a big deal. You're going to choose to buy a lot of coffee off a very small sample, and in the past, one of the complaints is that the sample roast is not representative of what you're going to do with production. So you make a big choice based off something that might not carry through. So the goal with sample roasting is to have equipment that allows you to get as close as possible to production roasting, rather than starting from scratch after you've chosen the coffee. Yeah.
And one thing I'd like to ask is different styles of roasting. Like, as roasters, what do you both roast for? Like, I know that you've released the pods recently. I'd be curious to know how roasting for the pods differs completely to roasting for whole bean coffee that you sell in the cafe, for example.
Yeah, sure. So there's refillable pods that you can buy, and I think quite a few people have had not great experiences with those. The coffee kind of tastes a little bit thin, quite sour, and that's mainly because the machines on the marketplace brew at a cooler temperature, about 89 degrees, and then they also brew to a strength that's in between espresso and filter. So the way we approach capsules is to roast for them as a brew method, which means we roast much quicker, much hotter, and darker as well.
Anne, what have you, because you've got a longer history with roasting, have you seen a massive shift in the way you approach it and the style of roasting, or has it always been slight adjustments over that time?
Well, sure, we've changed. We probably thought we did a fairly good job in the beginning. Would be really interesting to try our coffee the way it tasted in 2007. But what we're trying to do ultimately is to bring out kind of the unique flavors of each coffee and try to add as little as possible.
What advice do you think you'd give yourself in 2007 if you go to the roastery? Say, hey Anne, listen to this.
I don't know. No, but I mean, the ambition has always been to do the very best job we can, but like the equipment we use now, for example, Cropster, or just got an IKAWA like a few months ago. As Maxwell was pointing out before, it's technology that helps us being consistent and kind of develop as a roastery. So, but our ambition is always to kind of showcase the uniqueness of each coffee, not add anything.
And also going to Cropster again, you were talking about, so obviously there's a software there when it comes to roasting and profiling, but you mentioned when it comes to the cupping table as well. How is Cropster adding advancements when it comes to cupping?
So, as I said, at the heart of Cropster there is our web platform, let's call it core, and this is where whatever your business is doing, where everything ends up, right? So you have, for example, our roast intelligence roasting software, but all roasts are then synced to this platform. They are directly linked to the green coffee that you used. It creates production statistics and so forth. And as for cupping, we have a cupping app, Cropster Cup, which works on basically all the devices. And what you do is you create a cupping session directly with the roasts or the green coffee or the samples that you have at hand in your web platform, right? So what does that mean is any cupping, any quality analysis or green buying process that you make is directly creating this big picture, right? So you, whether you do a production cupping or you buy a green coffee, you do the cupping directly on this entity, on this green coffee or on this roast. So then you can go back into distinguished reports and, for example, search I did a cupping session with 6 coffees show me the one that's scored highest on acidity and has a peach flavor, right? Or over time, if you want to go back and see, hey, I did different production coffees over time. How does the coffee's flavor profile change as the green coffee, excuse me, gradually ages? So this is what we're trying to do with Cropster, to create this big picture between green and roasted and quality to its very detail. Whatever your approach might be, whether you're very generic in a production cupping, for example, where you want to say, yeah, good, bad, or ugly, or if you buy green coffee based on the full SCA standards.
So it's just allowing people to have an archive of all the coffees that they've come across.
It's an archive. If I want to make sound the word archive more interesting, I guess it's a knowledge database, right? So the human brain or sheets of paper only have limited capacity to track what you're doing, right? And you do certain things consistently over time, but some things change, some variables change, and you want to know what has changed and what is the outcome. And I guess this is at the very core or the purpose of our company, to give you access to this knowledge, which you create anyway, but it's stored centrally and you can always go back and dig in and see, that's what happened.
I guess when it comes to technology and roasting, it's a great thing because man and machine have to work together in order to pull the best out of a coffee, as opposed to just stepping back and having it automated. It's working together. That's cool.
And it's not that technology, neither for coffee nor for anything else, will ever replace the human being. Much less in coffee, where we depend so much on our sensory skills and our nose and our eyes and our ears and everything. You know, where the human mind is weak, I want to say, you know, to track a certain amount of data or information, to create knowledge and be able to make good decisions, you might need this technology assistance to track this and have it at hand when you need it. That's basically the entire point, to make the data that you create anyway useful.
Cool. Any questions so far? Anyone? Cool. Okay. I'd like to know, could you explain a little bit why you roast the way you do? Like, do you roast so it's like an omni roast, it suits loads of different brew methods? Do you roast because of the water in the area of the roastery? Is there anything you want to discuss with regards to that and explain to people why you have a certain approach?
We do not omni roast, we roast for either espresso or filter cupping. Water is complex, so we're trying to get feedback from our wholesale customers. But basically, the only way we feel that we can do quality control is based on the kind of our premises, our equipment, our water filtration, etc. And then try to advise our clients is that to change. Yeah.
Do you believe in omni roasting? Do you think it works?
I mean, not for us. No. I think you never kind of name it.
Do you think it's doing a disservice to the coffee because you're trying to be very general as opposed to really focusing on that and drawing out the best bits?
It depends on your approach to brewing, but from my experience, a lot of coffee companies, coffee bars still, brew kind of in a traditional way. I think the only roasters I've tried coffee from tend to shine either on the filter side or the espresso, but I've never been blown away by it.
This coffee's quite needy, and you don't want to just make it look like a general. Maxwell, you got anything to add to omni roasting? Your verdict?
Yeah. This would be awkward if I did omni roasting, but I don't. No, omni roasting doesn't make sense to me personally, because there's two theories, I guess, about omni roasting. We can save a lot of time in our roastery by only roasting the coffee one way, But the more philosophical idea is that there's this perfect roast for the coffee, and then it's up to the brewer to figure out how to make espresso to showcase those flavours. The reason that doesn't make much sense to me is I feel like the only way we ever roast anything is to taste it. So the feedback loop is we cup it or we brew it, and we decide whether we're changing the roast. So all the while we are actually tailoring the roast to a specific feedback loop. For a lot of roasteries, that's cupping. So then, you know, theoretically, roasters don't drink a lot of espresso a lot of the time, and get really excited by it on the cupping table. And then you go and brew it as espresso, and it's different. And often people will blame espresso, so maybe we need to brew better espresso. But for me, espresso is a completely different brew method, a different feedback loop, and requires a different approach. There's also some really interesting sensory science about this. So if you were to give people the same liquid, it could be anything, it could be blackcurrant juice, whatever, coffee, and you give it to them at different concentrations, they don't pick it as the same thing. So when you make something really concentrate, certain aspects of the flavour become stronger in terms of your perception. So for me, that's why it makes sense to roast differently for those different brew methods. But there's quite a lot of omni-roasting now. There's, you know, it's obviously each of our roasteries, we roast how we want to roast. And even though we're all saying that we're trying to showcase the coffee, the character of the coffee, we're ultimately, you're doing that through us and what we think that representation is, which I guess is part of the beauty of it all. So, yeah, cool.
And then when it comes to advancements with roasting, we're talking about technology and the integral part that that plays, but is there anything else that any of you guys see as being an excitement advancement in roasting over the next few years? Anything on the radar that's caught your eye?
No, this is slightly off topic, but I guess you can bring the IKAWA like in a little bag, right? Yeah. It's great, because kind of, yeah, you can't travel with roasters normally. So me, for example, when I just went on a sourcing trip, could have brought, you know, the IKAWA and roasted at a farm, for example, which is pretty cool.
You do that on future trips then, take that with you? That would be great.
Maybe. No, but I'm just saying that it offers new possibilities, which are, you know, really interesting.
Do you have a lot of farmers at Origin who use the IKAWA?
Yeah, absolutely, and a lot of roasters that travel with it and sort of take control of the sample roasting. And you know, the interesting thing there, as well as our roaster being portable, is the digital aspect. So you can roast it exactly the same as you would in your lab. Maybe make some adjustments for liquidity, but essentially you should be roasting it the same way as you would in the lab, which is really interesting. Yeah, we have a lot of producers that are using the IKAWA. Our favourite example of that is making roasting more accessible to smallholder farmers. So a lot of our clients over there will, or in various countries, will literally take the roaster along with the cupping kit, sometimes a depulper in the van, you know, and take it to smallholder farmers and let them cut their coffee and see it roasting. So I guess it's not only roasting, it's other things, but knowledge and the ability to learn more about coffee is becoming more accessible. And then I guess the thing I would add about advancements in roasting would be more along the lines of more countries now around the world are adopting specialty coffee. So they're emerging as specialty coffee, where specialty coffee is consumed, so consumers are becoming more discerning about the coffee. And I'm seeing all over the world passionate people starting roasteries, starting cafes, and really pushing specialty coffee. So the advancement I feel we'll see in the next 5 years is that the countries that are not as well known for roasting and brewing specialty will start to become more well known. Yeah, that's the advancement. So like the Middle East is a great example. There's so many passionate people in the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Iran even, and they're getting all this equipment from wherever they can, and they're trying to push the boundaries of coffee. China is a great example. In 5 years, China will probably drink the most specialty coffee in the world. We'll see. But yeah, I guess that's, for me, what will happen over the next 5 years.
Because you also have it's a Korean distributor, isn't it? You're also over there.
Yeah, that's right. There are countries that drink. So in Korea, they drink a lot of coffee. Like you can't. There are more coffee shops than the UK for sure. Like you can be standing anywhere in the centre of town and you'll see 3 coffee shops. But what's different there is the middle of the road coffee shops. There's a lot of them, and not a lot of specialty really pushing it. And so my hypothesis is that countries like that, they are becoming more discerning about the coffee, and they will push, so the middle will go. And that can only be good for coffee, and hopefully producing good quality coffee, etc. Yeah.
Cool. Can I go back to the pods, just because I'm quite interested in, you launched them 4 weeks ago?
8 weeks.
8 weeks?
I know, it's old news.
That was 8 weeks ago.
8 weeks, yeah.
That's gone quickly. And how's it been? How's the response been to them since they've gone on the market?
Yeah, it's been really good. Yeah, lots of a broad range of people who are interested. Obviously, specialty people who follow different trends or different ideas that are happening, so are keen to taste them and see what they like. But also a big audience of people who actually. I think what's interesting about, say, Nespresso branding, for example, is it appeals to a premium consumer who wants to buy, they're after the best coffee experience. And so there's a crossover there that they might not have explored specialty in the way we would define it, and this technology is allowing them to do that. Yeah, and just all sorts of opportunities open up really to what you can do with them in terms of, restaurants love, to them it's ticking all their boxes, it's dream come true, they don't have to invest in a very expensive espresso machine. But also in terms of training and so on and so forth. So it's been really fun to sort of present capsules as a, maybe sort of shake off a bit of the stigma that they have. And we're also teaming up with Bath University again, a bit like we did with the water project, but this time on sustainability. So, capsules get a bad rap, they're destroying the planet. But the academic research shows a different story, which is really interesting. We launch a compostable capsule in March as well. So what's fascinating is the life cycle in sustainability and waste. It's often important to look at, you can call it cradle to grave, or so the whole journey of the product. And actually the most sustainable way to drink coffee in terms of the environment is to drink instant coffee. Because you extract a lot out of it, so you get a lot out of your coffee. When you ship it around the world, it weighs a lot less per cup, and all of these things have a big impact. And capsules actually, even with waste, appear to be more sustainable than drip coffee or espresso. So that's super interesting. And one of the questions we have is, with the compostable capsule, there's the potential that it's actually not better than the existing capsules, because you have to grow the corn and so on and so forth to make the capsule. But so it's just really fun to be exploring that. And I think making the capsules has sort of forced me personally to get really interested in the sustainable aspect of coffee.
Are there any changes that you'd like to see within the industry when it comes to roasting? Anything that stands out to any of you guys?
No, I think when we were talking about new things happening, I think it's sort of more of a general movement. Is there's been technology in coffee for a lot of years, but it's nearly always intellectual property. It's a big company that's done some research and it benefits their product. And I know talking about waves in coffee is a bit annoying, the third wave, and people are like, what's the fourth wave? But you weren't going to ask that question, were you?
No.
Maybe. But so a friend of mine actually, he said that the fourth wave was the age of information. And I think it's not just information itself, it's the age of sharing information. And this technology accrues the information, and then we're rapidly evolving as a roasting community because all that information is being shared.
Cool. Any questions from the audience? Anything to add? Anybody curious about anything to do with roasting? Because now's a good time to ask these guys. No? Anything else you guys want to add? Cool. Well,
Thank you very much for having us, Dan.
no, thank you very much for being involved, all of you. It's an honour. And thank you for coming all the way over as well. Much appreciated. Anne's just back from Colombia as well, with a delayed flight this morning, so thanks. Thank you. Cheers. And then at 4 o'clock we've got Falcon running a panel, the UK Modern Slavery Act. And for people who came to Generation Coffee last December, they should remember their gender equity panel, which caused a lot of shockwaves. So it'd be cool to come back at 4 and see what they've got to say today. Thanks.